Hello, everyone. Welcome back to That Can't Be Right, a podcast about exploring structural wrongs, cultural oddities, and wild opinions. I am your host, Ryan Rogan, and I've missed you so much. I hope you have missed me too. If you want to keep up with That Can't Be Right, should I ever disappear from your podcast feed again, you can follow along at TCBR Pod on Twitter and Instagram, or if you leave a review on Apple, maybe that will motivate me to come back to this faster. But in the meantime, I'm back. It is the tail end of homecoming season, and that is a season, depending on where you're from, that's full of a lot of different traditions. Maybe you have an awesome band that performs at halftime of your shows. Maybe you're an alumni at a really fun college. Can't relate. Just kidding. But the tradition I am talking about today is uniquely Texan and something my cousin says should be exported from Texas, unlike other things you hear about in the news about Texas in the last, few years. So today I am talking to Kisha Clark. She is the founder of Mums Inc. and also the owner and designer at DK Florals. And my goal today is for Kisha to explain to us the beautiful, uniquely Texas tradition of mums. Kisha, welcome to That Can't Be Right.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yes.
Mums is definitely, it's mostly a Texas thing. So like the majority of it is, the large and extreme is definitely Texas. But oddly enough, there are a few other states who participate in homecoming in the mum way. So Oklahoma, New Mexico, and Florida are also mum states. They are not huge like we are or like we do it, but I have had the joy of talking to mum makers in those states and shipping mums and supplies to those states. So they do participate, but nobody does like Texas, which is not abnormal. That's kind of how we do everything.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. It's the motto. So there are people who are very confused. And of course, as I release this episode, if you go to social media, I promise to have a collection of mum photos. And if you have a mum photo that you want to share with me, please send it at TCBR Pod, Twitter and Instagram. But first, Kisha, for the uninitiated, how would you describe a mum?
So to tell the traditional story, originally, like homecoming, of course, is a nationwide thing. The alumni return to celebrate, a specific game, and everybody does everything. And 70-ish plus years ago, it used to be that people used the fall flower to do that, and that was a live chrysanthemum. And then over time, some areas started to add little school color ribbons. They might add an initial with a pipe cleaner or a name or a school or a mascot. And it just kind of took off from there. And then you see probably in the late 70s, early 80s, they transformed from live flowers to a more, silk flower that allows for more elaboration. And over time, it became the way that students express themselves during homecoming, whether it be seniors or underclassmen or, depending on the town. The interesting thing about homecoming is it's not the same everywhere, even in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Every area of the state has their own way of doing homecoming, but the gist of it was that it just evolved from a standard homecoming tradition saying, hey, welcome alumni to, hey, welcome alumni, but also students who are in high school still. Here's how I show you everything that I'm about and everything that I participated in, or just plain how I show my school spirit. So that's what it's evolved to. I mean, and even I've been making mums, it'll be 20 years next year. And even since the time that I started to now, the tradition has changed dramatically. We used to just, it was ribbon stickers and glitter, and that was it. And now we barely use the same things that we used 20 years ago. We have graphic design is involved. I mean, it's a whole shebang. I mean, there's musical lights, color changing lights. I mean, it's kind of crazy. We get crazy people who want, weird themes, but that's an expression of who they are. So you try to absorb that and, try to give them the option to be, their best selves. And it's kind of a social breaker because on that day, people don't really care about, who's with who or what group is talking to what group. Everybody just wants to touch and feel the mums, which is a part of what I love about it, is it kind of breaks down social, taboos or normalities and allows people to just engage regardless of where they think they might fall on the social ladder. So it's a good thing. And it's, since COVID, it's become, probably 3 or 4 times as popular as it was before.
Interesting.
Yeah, surprising. Yeah, surprising.
Sorry,
Surprising.
Kisha was looking at my face. I'm apparently a very expressive person, but when she said it's an industry that grew as a result of COVID, I'm
Yeah,
happy to hear that, especially for you. So let's take a couple steps back, and I definitely want to hit on like everything you just mentioned.
sure.
You talked about the history and origin of mums. You talked about being in this business for 20 years. Well, I guess we've described the mums and how are
Right,
what typically happens is that you wear your mom the day, if homecoming's like a Friday night, you're wearing your mom that Friday to school, or if
right.
homecoming's Saturday, like you're wearing your mom Friday and everybody's seeing it. I made my face a couple times because like the graphic designer stuff is insane because it used to just
Yeah,
be you had like the big kind of centerpiece
yeah,
if you were going to homecoming with someone typically, or not typically, but you might see like two little bears or something, a boy bear and a girl bear,
right.
and then your logo and all that stuff. And you're talking about a whole new world. So
Yeah.
first, let's start with how did you get into this business? What attracted you to it?
So I made my own mums in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And probably when I was at the start of my IT career, I was living in the suburbs of Plano and I saw a sign that said, homecoming mums, you can wear your homecoming mums on Friday or something like that. It was along the lines of spirit in some way. And I was like, oh, you know what? I did that when I was in high school. I could certainly do this again, now that I'm an adult. And, wouldn't it be cool to do this as a side gig? And it was supposed to be this really small thing that I was just going to, kind of fiddle with. And I ended up building a website. This was in 2002, and I ended up building a website. There was like 5 of us on. I don't even think there was 5, maybe like 3. There was like 3 of us on the internet at the time. Nobody was selling supplies online, so we launched the site, and that was kind of all she wrote. And then from there, it just became over time. It just became larger and larger, and it was always something that I was obsessed with because even in high school, I just thought they were the prettiest things. I mean, you kind of wait for that, when
Mm-hmm.
you're in Texas. We look forward to the years when you get an opportunity to have a mom. So I was also always enamored with it, and then as it became a business, it just kind of grew over time. And then the next thing I knew, at 10 years in, I was like, people have to be talking about this. Every business has an organization. Every business has a group of professionals that they, kind of talk to, and we help each other or we work with each other or whatever the situation is. And we didn't have that in Mums. So I was like, okay, well, this just seems odd, and it kind of happened because a friend of mine who is a business owner in Arlington was like, hey, look, I'm looking for a particular item. I know you're in town and you seem to sell it. Would you mind doing a trade with me? And we got to talking, and the next thing I knew, she was like, we can't be the only people that, need to have conversations about things during the season. And that's how the Facebook group started, which we call Mums Inc. And it started from there. And then, here we are almost 10 years later. And we're super busy and ever present for sure. But that's how it started. It was supposed to just be a hobby on the side.
Mm-hmm.
And then it kind of took over.
And in the 20 years you've been doing this, one, you people have the opportunity, at least, unless there is a global pandemic, to go to homecoming every year. There are multiple kids and families. There are multiple schools. Like,
Oh, yeah.
how often are you working with the same people, or are you working with like someone from?
So
Go ahead.
it really depends. Like some of my customers are very, they return every year. Some kids, I have couples who started dating in, 7th or 8th grade, and they're still dating when they're seniors. I have families who have siblings where I end up shipping them 3 or 4 mums at a time. So definitely customers stay.
Hmm.
That's definitely a thing. I don't know. It just depends on the situation, but definitely working with families is common. Siblings is common. All of those things are pretty standard in the business.
Awesome. Awesome. So when you're working, this is the last question I'll ask about like family. Well, hopefully, maybe the last
No,
question.
no worries.
When you're working with them, is it interesting to see like what was the trend when you first started, when you did their first design versus like what it is, especially if they've been dated from 7th to 12th grade?
Oh yeah. Well, it's definitely because sometimes you have siblings in those same families that have couples that have been dating for so long. So it becomes they can't be the same because they're sisters or or it's brothers who are ordering for their girlfriends, and you have to be careful with that. And they do evolve over time. I mean, you see some of the kids, they don't necessarily care. Especially the guys, like they don't really care. Like 9, 10, 11, they're just like, I'm doing this because my girlfriend really wants me to do this. Or I'm supposed to buy a mum for her, and so I'm good. But usually the senior year is when you see people really are like, okay, so I really want this specific thing. You see them kind of grow from, I'm doing this because I'm supposed to, and then by the senior year, it's like, we have to kind of go all out, or it's, I want something specific, or they have a better idea of what they want to see when they're getting ready to leave school.
Okay.
So yeah, for sure, that's a definite.
Very cool. Very cool. So let's talk about some of the current traditions. I am a few years removed from high school. And again, I mentioned kind of the layout I'm most familiar with. What's happening now? You mentioned musical lights, graphic
Oh wow!
design.
So it's so when I first started making mums, we pretty much just kind of it was very basic, and I don't want to say basic is not elaborate, but basic compared to today.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we just had, it was ribbons, stickers, trinkets, and that was, kind of it. Today, I don't make and forgive the bells in the background. I've got 4 Westies and here with me. Today, it's more of a conversation of which area you live in determines what the traditions are. So overall, graphic design has become a large part of my making, whether it's school logos or, custom cut letters or, custom cut trinkets because, we don't have trinkets for everything that kids can be involved in. I have lights that change into 16 colors that come with a remote. Some of those will bump to particular music if you program it to do so with your phone. We get all sorts of random themes. You get Waterburger mums are a big deal. Not one I've done, and I'm kind of glad about that. You get not really my style, but you get Star Wars, and over time it just went from what they did in school, but now it's more about what they do in school and who they actually are.
Mm-hmm.
Like what interests them, whether it's gaming or um, anything that's outside of school, all-star cheerleading, or anything that is related to what they do. And a lot of the sad things that we see now, we see memorials, we see breast cancer tributes, we see tributes to COVID situations that have happened. So it varies, but back then it was just very specific. There was a tradition that you followed, and that was it. And today it's feathers, and I mean I probably buy as much feather as I buy ribbon almost. And that wasn't really a thing at all. When I was in school, we didn't have that. I graduated in 97, and we didn't have those types of things. It was just, ribbon and stickers and flowers, bears. Good job.
Yes.
That
Same.
was it. Few braids. Today we probably have, I don't know, 16 different braids that exist. It's less about the trinkets and things that you used to look at and more just about pretty. It's really the easiest way that I can explain it. It's kind of become a more elegant craft depending on the designer. And then it also depends on where you are, because in DFW we are semi-traditional, meaning that we kind of follow what's normal. But if you're in Houston, Houston is known for off color, meaning that they have a tendency from freshman year to senior year to not necessarily wear their school colors in their mum. They kind of do whatever they want, whatever suits them. You could go to and you can say Houston and DFW are more larger mums than you see in areas like West Texas or East Texas or South Texas. You see similar traditions on a smaller scale, but the idea of what mums are and what's normal is different by region, for sure.
Interesting. So I graduated from high school in 2009, and you pretty much social media was a thing, but not as big as a thing as it obviously is now. So you really only saw mums from your community. But I would love to
Right.
be able to go back in time and be like, okay, in 2009, this was happening in El Paso, this was happening in Lubbock,
Right.
this was happening in South Texas. I would love to make the comparisons to see how your experience, I'm sure your experience is accurate, but I would love to see it what was happening back in my day, as the people say.
Right.
I mean, that's super fascinating. And again, I encourage everybody to if you have a picture of mom, please send it to me because I want to see, because some of them were very traditional. I feel like my high school, very suburban high school, very conservative. Everybody kind of stuck to the colors, but I can totally see Houstonians just doing their own thing. God bless us.
Yeah, it's pretty common. I mean, we get it occasionally here, but I ship, so I get everybody's tradition no matter where they are.
Hmm.
And they just kind of order what they want from me based on their like of my
Yep.
design. But there are people who are specifically local to an area, so they cater specifically just to what their customers ask for, and that's a big deal. So it just being aware of what is common in your area is definitely
Hmm.
applicable.
I also, going back to what you said earlier, I love that people are using it as like just another expression of themselves beyond just homecoming 2021. It's like, I love this
Right.
and it's going to be reflected there. So that's a really cool opportunity that I don't know. Like, again, back in my day, we necessarily took advantage of. Off the top of your head, do you remember any like records? Like, what's the heaviest one you've had to ship? What's the longest? Do you remember any of that?
They're always for me. They're always the same length.
Okay.
So mums are always about. It's about a total. The skirt's always 36 inches.
Mm-hmm.
So if you add the head to that, which is probably another 6 or 7 inches going up and down, so you're looking at probably 42 inches. When I ship in a box, I ship in a 48 by 12 by 12 box. If it's one of the larger mums, it'll be 48 by 16 by 16,
Mm-hmm.
so that it's wide enough to fit the box. But heavy wise, I don't think I've ever. We've shipped quite a few large ones. The crazy part is that when you weigh them on the scale, they don't always weigh out. They feel heavy by hand, but then when you go and weigh it, it's like 12 pounds, which doesn't seem like a whole lot, but it is if you have to carry it around your neck all day, which is literally what they end up doing. And usually lights are what make things heavy because they have battery packs on the back of them.
Okay.
So that's what will cause them to be a little bit heavier. But most of the time, it's funny. Last year, we were handing out mums to people who were picking up, and one of them was rather heavy, and we were handing it to her. And we were like, "I'm sorry, this is really heavy because of the light packs and whatever." And she was like, and she was totally worth it. Like, I'm willing to deal with the pain for the day. It's totally worth it to me to go through that to wear what she wanted to wear. So they could care less. Like, the kids themselves, they don't care as long as it's what they wanted. They don't care how much it weighs or how long it is, as long as it's the display of what they've asked for. That's kind of how they rationalize that weight around their neck all day. Because personally, myself, it's been 20 plus years since I've worn a mum, and I make things that I often go, I would not wear this all day. It would literally just break my
Yeah,
neck.
it's what a blessing to not be concerned about your spine uh,
Right.
when you're,
Exactly.
14 through 18. Oh gosh. I
Right.
just keep aging myself more and more throughout this entire conversation. It's super fun. But no, again, like it's a special occasion. You want to look your best. You want to have like the coolest thing. So I get it. E- As an 18-year-old, being my current age, I don't.
I make them and I don't often get it. Sometimes when, I'm doing my last two mums of the season this week. And one of them is just a standard mum. It will actually ship to a school in Houston. And then one of them is what we call a kitchen sink, which means it kind of added all that they could possibly add to it.
Hmm.
It's a great way to go out, but at the same time, it's like this mom's going to take me
Yeah.
forever to get done. But at Mum Makers, we truly love what we do,
Hmm.
but it's very difficult for people to understand that, like when a normal business does in a 365-day period, every year, is consistent. But for Mum Makers, that 365-day period is literally 90 days.
Hmm.
And then and you prepare all year for that. For me, mum season used to just kind of end in November and you were kind of done. Since I started Mums Inc., all it does is start all over. So at the end of the mum season of making mums, then the season turns into preparing other people to prepare their businesses for the next season. So it's kind of year round. It's just that I don't have to deal with customers year round. But it's an insane amount of work for a 90-day period. We are known for not sleeping very much during that time. And some of us are full timers, but some of us are, we work regular jobs while we do this. So it's just a very interesting period of time. That's the easiest way to say it.
Oh, definitely. So from there, I have two questions. One, talking about how I'd love to hear about how COVID impacted your business. And then I'm going to say the second question so we don't forget. 2, how far out in advance, like, are you booked for the season? Because I was very excited you said yes, thinking she's going to be so busy, there's no way we'll be able to do this.
Yeah, so I book for the season usually within the first. So I start bookings in July, because people tend to start messaging around that time, or they've asked the year before, how do I, get to this point? So, um, and like this year's been crazy. But to answer the first question, let's start with that.
Hmm.
So the how COVID impacted, we didn't really know what to expect. Last year when COVID hit, you didn't know what was going to happen. You didn't know if people were going to have homecoming or they were going to, reschedule things. We just didn't know what to expect. Ironically, it didn't really matter because people, especially seniors, because they don't have a second run at it. So for them, it was a huge ordeal regardless because whether homecoming was going to happen or not, they ordered their mums. So I was just as busy last year as I would have been any normal year, because people, seniors, and then parents were trying to present their kids with some sort of normality. So they didn't want them to miss out on keepsakes. So you saw freshmen and seniors kind of do whatever anyway because freshmen had been waiting to this point, and then seniors aren't going to get another run.
Hmm.
So whatever we were going to do for homecoming in 2020 was going to be all they were going to have. So for them, it was important to do the most anyway. So we were just as busy. And it was surprising because I wasn't expecting that. But we were prepared because we prepare like we normally prepare for any season. So that was interesting. This year, with the expectation of going back to what we consider normal, even though we're not out of a national pandemic or a global pandemic, um, we just expect it to be busy as we normally are. However, we were wrong. It is, I don't even know if I've ever in my 20 years seen customers be so anxious. I was booked the first week of September. And I hadn't even given out mums yet. I hadn't even had the first homecoming yet. And I was already booked and done with what I was going to do in a season. And I can't even begin to explain how many no's that I've had to say or to turn people away. And the crazy part about it is normally I can just refer. I can say, oh, hey, so and so mom maker can help you out in this stead. But a good healthy majority of my mom makers were booked pretty early as well. So there really wasn't any place to send them to. My vendors were like, we haven't been this busy since 2014. We haven't seen this much business since then. It's kind of insane. So parents were really excited to get back to football and they wanted to show school spirit. So homecoming was a huge ordeal because it was like a return to return to normality for them. And so they were super excited. I also think some people felt like they took it for granted, that it was always going to be there. And then it wasn't there. And then they were like, oh crap, I need to reevaluate this because even with the orders that we took, basic wasn't common. Everybody from freshmen to seniors wanted as elaborate as they wanted it to. And that is something that was consistent across all markets. So even no matter where my mom makers are, South Texas, East Texas, West Texas, the Valley, whatever, they all experience the same amount of insanity as far as how many customers and how much they wanted and the constant, there's only so much I can make. And that's the part that's hard for customers. If you hold yourself to a certain level of quality, at some point you have to say no because time is only going to permit that you're able to do so much. And that's the hard part to explain to customers because they're like, and then you get the stories and the tears because people will cry to get to get a mom. And you're just like, I know it's terrible, but I still can only make so many, no matter how bad I feel for you right now in this
Hmm.
situation. And getting back to regular life, which is what people were all about this year, you still can only do so much. So to be honest, it's almost like they started to reappreciate the tradition and what it was about. So business period has just been insane. I mean, we ship supplies and we were at one point we're shipping an easy 70, 80 boxes a week of supplies. I mean, they were trying to kill us. We restocked 3 times before we were like, okay, we're going to close for the season because we are just dead. I mean, you can only keep that schedule for so long.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's definitely been insane. Insane.
I'm happy your business was booming for this season, but that's crazy. I have kind of an aside of a question. Given
Mhm.
all of the news I've read about how broken the global supply chain is. Did y'all have any issues with that this season?
Very much so. There were many. I still have things that are going to ship now because we've seen some boats come in. That it's fine because we're going to use it next year, so it's okay. But we got several notifications of items that weren't going to make it from China on time because some things I directly import. And then I have importers who import things who were like, it's not going to be here, or we only got half of it. And the same thing with ribbon. One of my suppliers in Balk Springs, who is probably the nation's largest buyer of acetate ribbon, which is what we normally, the colored ribbon that you see in a mum. Her shelves were empty, and at one point she was literally just like, I'm just buying ribbon of any kind or color just so that I have something on the shelves. And then she literally ran out of white ribbon completely and won't get it anymore and ran out of flowers, and she restocked twice. And we're talking, they're a multi-million-dollar business, and they literally were out of the basics of supply. So supply chain hit us very hard in certain areas, especially for mum makers who are still more of on the hobbyist side and tend to shop come the season. So they tend to shop come August and September. They got hit with a lot of hard realities. Those of us who start buying in January, you had time to prepare because you saw the early issues and you were able to kind of prepare to get around it. But those who might be a little bit smaller and might have waited, it hurt them. It hurt them big time because there wasn't any place to get some of the things that we were normally getting, or the cost was so high that it was going to impact customers, and you had to make a judgment call of whether or not it was worth it to keep that cost and pass it to the customer, or just negate that from your offerings for the year. So yeah, supply chain was a big deal.
Man, cars, PlayStations, mums.
Yeah, anything with a microchip was an issue. I mean, and we saw this exact same thing in my regular job. So my company is the largest manufacturer of firewalls in the world. And literally, we were getting weekly emails of updates that, this is going to be a halt. This is going to be a halt. This is how much we have. This is when we're going to do it. I really don't know that there's an industry anywhere that didn't feel it in some way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been nuts. And this is not the topic of the episode, but if you've read any articles in the past week and you're trying to pinpoint what's wrong with the global supply chain, the answer is everything.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Everything. So let's see. What do we have left to cover? Oh, I hinted at this earlier and your dog is adorable, by the way. Phil, please keep this in.
Hi, Jimi Hendrix.
Jimi Hendrix. Love it. So I mentioned it earlier, like social media wasn't as popular and as ingrained into the daily routine, I think, by the time I graduated high school.
Right.
How do you think?
Yeah, Facebook was still very new when you graduated from high school. It was only about a year and a half old by then.
So how do you think like having social media has influenced like what people are asking for when they come to you for a mom?
It's more influenced the way people reach you,
okay,
or how people see. Not so much what they ask for, but more along the lines of how the business workflow works. So if you started working the business in social media, then like for instance, I get lots of customers who found me and they'll ping me via Instagram or they'll ping me via Facebook. You tend to get parents on Facebook and kids on Instagram, which is right up to par with who uses what. And then, I had people find me via TikTok. Everybody finds me via Pinterest because Pinterest is full of moms. So there is lots of collaboration there that drives traffic to websites. And since I've been online for so long, it's just been the natural progression of things. If you look for homecoming moms in my area, you're likely going to find me. But really more just how people communicate what they need or what they want is how social media affects you and how people find you. That's pretty much the easiest way to say how it impacts the business.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. We're coming to the end, and I just want to ask about your personal taste in design. You mentioned no interest in doing the Whataburger mom. What is how would you describe, your favorite mom you've designed or the perfect mom, like if you were putting one together?
I am all about elegance.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so much, I would say even simple elegance is probably, I strive for pretty,
mm-hmm.
And not so much We do larger mums, that's a thing, but in my mind, less is more. But my customers tend to appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, my work, my customers, because every mum maker has a thing. There's a thing that they do really well that people come to them for. And for me, it's always been two things. It's the craftsmanship of what I do, probably the quality of the supplies that I use, but it's also braiding, which was always a really big deal for me. So I've been braiding forever. So those are the two things that I would say draw people to me. But you could probably say that it's simple elegance, and I tend to be different than what other people do. My look is a little bit on my own, which is something I just kind of grew over, the past 20 years that I've been making mums. But that's what I hear from my customers when they get their stuff from me, is that it's so pretty, it's so elegant. This is exactly what we wanted. It's not over the top or gaudy, and every person has a look that they like, which to each his own. But that's what people will say about my work.
Awesome. Actually, I have two more questions.
Oh, you're good. You're fine.
First, you said you have 2 more months to get out. How are you going to reward yourself when you're done with this season?
The crazy part about mom season is that you don't sit still without feeling like you're missing something. So like when you sit still and you're not doing something, you feel like, okay, there's probably 8 things I could be doing right now. So literally it's nothingness. Like I will spend some time just sitting still, and not doing anything because I've been doing something every minute for the past, period of time. So nothingness is the reward. And then I'll get back to, regular life of interaction. But for a minute, I'm just not going to do a thing. That's how that works.
That is self-care. That is the very basic of self-care, and it's very important.
Yes, very much so.
Okay, so everybody, I hope you feel like you know everything you need to know about mums. They're a wonderful Texas tradition, outside of Texas too, but this is a Texas-centric podcast. So, Kisha, one thing I do like to ask people before they leave is, what is something that you think can't be right? It can't be the pandemic, because everybody has said that. But what is something else that you think can't be right? And you would be like, I want to hear an episode about that.
I don't know. Maybe that the Cowboys are going to have a better year than we've expected. Someone said that can't be right. I've been a Cowboys fan for a really long time, and everybody's like, yeah, it feels like the triplets are back. I was like, whoa, people, slow down. Let's not do that. Let's just see how this goes, because we've gone 13-3 and still gone home. So let's calm down. So maybe sports wise, or maybe even, we're losing a couple of teams from the Big 12. I'm a sports person, or a football person. Anyway.
Yes. I think those are great. I think college football is a very interesting world. I did an episode on Baylor earlier in this season of That Can't Be Right, and the money that flows in and out of college sports is insane. And then
my cousin went to Baylor, graduated from Baylor, and now plays for the 49ers.
Oh, that's amazing. Are they playing today? I'll be on the lookout. I'm a Texans fan, so football isn't really a happy place for me.
Someone has to be. It's okay. I still only think there's one Texas team, but someone has to be a Texas fan. I mean, especially if you live in Houston. Yeah. I mean,
you're not wrong. I went to school. I did my undergraduate degree in Pennsylvania, and the first question people would ask
in Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. Have you seen snow? And then the second question is, are you a Cowboys fan? And I was like, come on, y'all. There's another professional football team in Texas. And they're like, oh, really?
Yeah, but they hate us the most.
They do.
They hate us the most.
They do. Baby boomers.
But it's okay.
Yeah.
It's a reciprocated feeling. I don't feel any more love for them than they feel for us. But they have like whole boots and shirts and stuff printed that they hate us so bad. Yep. But, I just keep it to the field.
Yeah.
But,
I feel like
it's serious.
Older gentlemen particularly would want to talk about the Oilers, and I was like, y'all, I was still teething when they left, so I can't really contribute to this conversation. But
and the crazy part is the Oilers are the Tennessee Titans. That's who the Oilers actually are. The Texans is actually a brand new team.
Yeah.
That didn't descend from the Oilers, even though people like to make that connection, but it's not the case.
Well, this was a fun tangent we went on. I'm very excited about it, and I'm very thankful you made time. We're talking on a Sunday, there are games on. So I very much appreciate you making time. Y'all, that is the end of this conversation. Thanks again to Kisha. If you are someone who knows someone who's going to need a mom next season, make sure you get on her calendar early to give yourself time, give her time, give the global supply chain time. And once again, any questions, comments, or concerns about this episode, you can find me at TCBRPod on Twitter and Instagram, maybe TikTok one day, but not today. Have a good day, y'all. Thanks for listening.